All right. Now, having talked about the affirmative forms of the be form of verbs, now we're going to talk about the negative forms and how do we make the negative forms of the be form of verbs. Now, just to remind yourself, what are the be form of verbs if you somehow somewhat did not understand or got whatever that we talked about in the previous lesson. So the be forms are verbs like am, is, or are. Now, these verbs are also called the auxiliary verbs, and they are very important. They are very important in a way that if you miss them in a sentence, then your sentence is going to seem a little bit incomplete. Or someone might not be able to understand you sometimes because they determine the time of speaking. They also determine whether you are talking about a quality of something or you're just talking about a person himself. Now, moving on to what this topic is all about, which is the negative forms of the be forms, or the negative form, or we also call it the negations of be forms, then we can clearly see that we have three be forms: one, am, is, and are. So if we want to change these auxiliary verbs or be forms into negative, we're just going to add a not, the word not, after am, is, are, or after the be form verb. Now, for example, in the previous sentence, in the previous lesson, we talked about the president of Brazil, Miss Lula da Silva. So, Lula da Silva is the president of Brazil. Using she, and if we are not talking about her being the president of Brazil, she's not the president now, so we're going to say she is not the president of Brazil. She is a civilian now. So she is not is our negative sentence. She is a civilian. Civilian, we're going to have some definition down there. What is a civilian, or who is a civilian? Okay, now let's have or talk about John. John is smart. He is smart. Making this sentence into the negative form, we're going to say he is not smart. Now, talking about I as a person, the first person, so you're going to say I am a student. Well, obviously, I'm not a student. So, I am not a student. I am a teacher of English. Now, moving on to the other helping verbs of are, which go with the pronoun you, we, and they. So, what are we saying here is that you are smart. You as one person, or you as a group of people, you are smart. Well, if I want to make this sentence negative, I'm going to say you are not smart. We are students. That's our next sentence using the pronoun we. We are students. If we want to say a negative form, we're going to say, we are not students. Let's use the last one and talk about them. Those people, okay, or those things. So we're going to say, they are doctors, or they are drivers. If we are going to make this sentence into negative, we're going to use the same form and just add a not after are. So, they are not drivers. They are doctors. Okay. Now here we are. Let's just make a quick recap and know that when you are making the negative forms of the be verb, then you just add not after the be verb. So be plus not. And be changes. This lesson, we're going to see how we can form the contraction forms of the auxiliary verbs, both in the affirmative, the positive form, and the negative forms. Remember, our aim at the end of it all is to make sure that we can practice. This is the grammar part. We've got a lot to go to move on to the practice part. I'll see you in the next topic.